Great. So before we get started, if you guys have any questions from last week, make sure that you type in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. So for example, within the language arts section, so far we did lesson 1. We did that during the first class. Lesson 2, we did that as well. Lesson 3, we worked on last class. And then lesson 4, we're going to start up with today. So if you're following along, so far we've done lesson 1, 2, and 3 for the verbal side of the exam. And we're going to jump into lesson 4. Okay. All right, so within lesson 4, we have the subject-verb agreement. Now, this subject-verb agreement is essentially just literally what it sounds like. Taking the subject and taking the verb in the sentence and making sure that they line up. Now, when they line up, you either have to make sure that they're both singular or that they're both plural. Actually, let me get the pen as well so I could write these things out for you guys, for those visual people. All right, let me get the pen. All right, so here we have the singular example. We also have the plural example. So the singular is going to look something like this. The pig eats. Now, granted, that's a very, very simplistic sentence, so we're not going to get something as simplistic as that on the exam, but it still just drives the point home of the concept that we're going to review. So here, the pig eats. Well, the pig is singular. Now, a lot of times say, oh, well, eats, people might say, oh, well, eats is plural, eats has an S. However, when we're dealing with the subject of the sentence, no S means singular. When we deal with the verb of a sentence, an S means singular. So it's kind of the opposite relationship of what you typically think. Now for the plural, it's the same thing. We got the pigs, which is plural, and that has an S, and eat is also plural, but now it has no S. So notice the comparison there. We have an S, no S combination for both of these, and that's traditionally how you can recognize the subject and verb agreement. Now there's going to be some exceptions. For example, if I say something like, the children eat. Notice there, children doesn't have an S at the end. And as we talked about with the apostrophes before, there's some plural words that simply do not end in an S. So if you come across something that looks like that, you wouldn't then add an S at the end here. You would just need to recognize that the children is plural, and then you would ask, how do I make a verb plural? Well, I make a verb plural by having no S at the end. So it's really just the verb is based off of the noun. So make sure that you identify the noun first or identify the subject first, and then you could identify the verb after that. Now, if let's say this becomes a little bit more complicated, because as we mentioned, you're not going to have something just as simple as this. So you might have something that looks like this. You might say the pig with all the other animals eats. Now in this case, you might be thinking, oh, well now eats and animals don't line up, so now I might have to cross out that S. However, on this subject-verb agreement section, there's 2 things that you want to look for. 1 is prepositional phrases, and 2 is additional information. So I'm going to go ahead, we're going to come back to this in a second, but let's take a look at these 2 things that I'm talking about, and then we'll bring it back to that so you could see it into application. So the first thing is removing additional information. Now, we previously talked about additional information in so many different ways. We talked about how if you have 2 commas around something, that's additional information. We also talked about if you have 2 em dashes, or if you have a colon, that's additional information, or even 2 parentheses, all of those things. Parentheses, em dashes, commas, colons, all those things are additional. So notice in this sentence where we say, my favorite history professor, as well as some of his administrative staff, were asked to resign. So initially you think, oh, well, were is plural, and the professor and the staff has a bunch of people, therefore it's also going to be plural. However, remember tip number 1, remove the additional information. So everything from this comma to this comma gets crossed out. That's not regarded in my subject. So my only subject here is my favorite history professor. That's my subject. So anyone have any idea of if that subject is singular or plural? Feel free to just type in the chat. Let me know what you think. Awesome, great job. So now that's singular, even though initially it might have looked plural. So we need to change the were, which is plural, to was, which is now singular. So notice that's why this first one says incorrect and this second one says correct, because now we're pairing singular with singular, which is correct. So that's our first thing, is just removing the additional information. Now, our next point is going to be taking out prepositional phrases. Now, prepositional phrases are going to be all those little words like on, to, by, for, with, in. All of those words are prepositions. Now, a prepositional phrase is those words plus the words that follow. So maybe like on the mountain, to the beach, by the park, for my friend, with my friend, in the pond. All of those things are prepositions. It starts with those little tiny words, and then it has the phrase to follow. So if we take a look at these two examples here, notice we have to remove the prepositional phrases. The prepositional phrases are never going to be part of the subject or the verb in the sentence. So in this case, if we say a pair of supportive shoes are important if you're experiencing lower back pain. So right here, it seems like we have the shoes and are, which are both plural. So it seems like it's correct. However, remember that first rule is remove prepositional phrases. So of is a preposition. The words that follow are of supportive shoes. So that is my preposition. That is what I'm going to cross out from the sentence. Now notice I just crossed out the shoes. So that's no longer my subject of the sentence. My subject is a pair. So a pair is going to be the subject. And a pair is singular. Even though it might seem like maybe that's plural because a pair has two items, still counts as something singular simply because of the fact that we have one pair. You could say multiple pairs, and now we're making it plural. So here we have something that's singular. So in this case, I have to change this to singular as well, which is going to be is. Now, if you're ever unsure if like was, were, is, are, any of those are going to be singular or plural, just make a quick sentence for yourself with some of those pronouns that we learned last week, saying like, he is smart. Oh, okay, well, he is singular, so is must be singular. First, like, they are smart. Now, notice in that case, they is plural, are is plural. Same with like, he was, as well as like, they were. So now you could tell that these two things are plural and these two things are singular. Just make some simplistic sentences to yourself. So now taking this content and going back to what I was mentioning here, notice when I had the sentence here that I said, with all the other animals. Here, I'm not basing it off of animals because I have a preposition, with. So with all the other animals is my prepositional phrase. That gets crossed off. The pig is still my subject and eats is still my verb. So even when we add extra information into the sentence, it doesn't make it now plural or singular, different from what it was, but you actually just cross that information out. Right, so before we do a couple more practice problems, there's just a few more things that I wanted to go over. So here, our first one is check the subject is before or after the verb. So in this case, if you have something along, let's say these lines, we have 3 raccoons live or lives under my deck in my backyard. Well, this one's a little bit easier because we have the traditional style that we're used to. The 3 raccoons is my subject, so the subject is before the verb. Now we also have some prepositions elsewhere in the sentence, but we'll get to that later. But it's easy because we have the subject and then the verb. So what are you guys thinking? Should this be live or lives? One with the S or without the S? Awesome, great job. Because you have 3 raccoons with has an S, so then live would be correct without the S. Now, if we take a look at this one, now it's kind of got a flip-flop structure. If you say, in the trunk of my car reside or resides 15 water bottles. Now, what am I talking about? Am I talking about the trunk, the car, the water bottles? It's a little bit hard to identify. So we could use those prepositional phrases to help us. In is a preposition, so in the trunk is a prepositional phrase. Of my car is a prepositional phrase as well. That means all that gets crossed off, none of that is part of my subject. Now I'm just left over with resides 15 water bottles. So now that tells me that this is going to be my verb and this here is going to be my subject. So keeping that in mind, what do you guys think is the answer for this one? Reside or resides? One with an S or without the S? Perfect. So most I'm seeing is correct. Our correct answer would be reside because 15 water bottles ends in an S. So I have multiple water bottles. So then I'm going to want no S at the end of this one. Now that same concept that we used here where we crossed out those prepositional phrases, we could do also with here. Cross out under my deck and in my backyard. And remember, here, anytime that you have prepositional phrases or additional information, you can cross it out as a preposition. So got a question here. Wait, why do we cross out in the trunk of my car part again? Just simply because it's a preposition. Remember going back to our rule over on tip 1 and tip 2. Well, tip 1 was simply remove any additional information. Our next rule was remove all prepositional phrases. So that's how you determine what my subject and what my verb is in the sentence. Because otherwise, if I didn't cross out those prepositions, then watch what happens. If I thought the trunk was my subject, then I would say the trunk, oh, the trunk has no S, so then resides would be my answer. But remember, we said the correct answer. Excuse me. Excuse me. So here, if we said reside, notice how that was my correct answer. But in this case, thank you for the bless yous. But here in this case, if we go just based off of the trunk, now we're going to go with resides because that has an S and the trunk has no S. Same with here, if we went with the car has no S and the resides has an S, so then you're going to pair those naturally together. So we need to figure out a way of determining what actually is the subject of the sentence and then what's all the stuff that we don't care about. And that's exactly how you do it. You cross out the additional information. You also cross out the prepositional phrases. So like in number 1, just to repeat, here, under my deck is a prepositional phrase. In my backyard is a prepositional phrase. So those can't be my subject, cannot be my predicate. Now I'm left over with just my subject and predicate. So 3 raccoons, that's going to be my subject, and that's going to be my verb. Now in our next one, we have in the trunk is a prepositional phrase. Of my car is a prepositional phrase. So remember, cross off all prepositions. So now I'm just left with reside and resides. That's going to be my verb. And 15 water bottles, that's my subject, or otherwise you could also call it as a noun. And then our subject-verb agreement is based off of subject and verb, subject and verb. And now we don't have all that extra information in the sentence. So hopefully that answers your question. If not, feel free to ask a follow-up question as to why that one might be correct, or in regards to the prepositions or anything. All right, perfect. So let's go ahead and let's do a couple practice problems. And let me bring those up real quick. All right, give me 1 second, just bring it up. Also, while I'm bringing this up, let me know if anyone in the chat has not been receiving the recordings. I've been sending them out via email. However, if you want the recordings and you have not been getting them for any reason, just feel free to put your email down below and I'll be sure to send that out to you. So while I'm bringing it up, if you have not been getting the recordings, have not been getting the emails from me, make sure that you put your email below and I don't mind sending it out to you. All right, so here we got a bunch of practice problems. Let's go ahead and give these a shot. So we're going to start with this one here. I'll post the poll. Awesome. And let me know your answers. Also, some people are saying that they didn't get an email like after each class of the recording. You won't get an email for each class. Every Monday, you're going to get an email based off of the previous week stuff. So we upload everything every week. You're going to get an email in regards to that. Now, quickly in regards to the slides, I will send the slides. I haven't sent the slides on emails, but I've just been putting it in the doc for anyone that comes to class. They could grab that. So I'll put that in a minute once everyone kind of puts their answer for this. And I will be sure to add one of the emails to the email list as well. All right, so I'll give it just 1 minute, and then you guys can finish up. All right, so I'll end the poll. We'll review this in a second. However, just want to, anyone that wants the slides, I will be sure to share those. All right, anyone that's looking for the slides, I just posted them. Whoops, I just posted it to one person. All right, now I sent it to everyone. So if you're looking for the slides, I just posted that in the chat. So go ahead and take a look at that for that additional information. Now, as far as the emails, I will go ahead and add that one email that was given to me. So let me go ahead. Stop sharing the screen. Perfect, just so I could add that email just to make sure that you guys all get that appropriate email. All right, perfect. Now also I'll show you guys the email just in case you didn't get it. Okay, so I just sent it out to the one person that asked for the email. And the email should look like this. So it just kind of each week on Monday, it'll say good morning, and then I'll remind you of the classes coming up. It'll have the link, and then it says the recorded class lectures. So you'll have, you had the first 4 classes so far. So all 4 are gonna be posted. Now next Monday, then you're gonna have 2 more lectures additionally to this. Right, so let's go ahead and jump back into where we were. Just want to make sure that everyone was getting that information. So, all right, so here we have these ideas of creating a healthier diet brings forth a better lifestyle in general. So remember, crossing out additional information is super important. Also, crossing out any prepositional phrases is important as well. So if we go ahead with this and start by crossing out some additional information, notice of is a preposition. So of creating a healthier diet, that all gets crossed out. So we're not worried about the idea, which is singular, but we're worried about the ideas. Ideas is plural, so therefore we want a plural here as well. Remember, we said that no SS combination, which is why bring would be correct. Answer choice C. All right, so great job if you got that. Looks like most people got that one, so that's good. This one's very similar to what we already did. All right, let's go ahead and challenge ourselves. This one definitely is a little difficult because when you take a look at it, there's going to be 2 subject-verb agreements actually in this. So I'm going to relaunch the poll and let's give it a shot. Someone says, is there a poll? Yes, there should be. Can you guys not see it? Let me try to end it. I'll relaunch it. All right, I just relaunched it. Take a look. Try and rearrange your screen a little bit. Sometimes it's hidden behind certain things. All right, perfect. Looks like some people are responding, so that means oh, whoops, someone said they can't see the answer choice D. D is just gonna be no change. So far the answers are looking pretty good for this one. Right, I'll give you guys like 30 more seconds and then we'll review. All right, perfect. So it looks like out of the 12 people that voted in, 11 got it correct. So let's just double check. Let's just double check on this to see why you may have got it wrong if you got one of the different answers or if you were thinking one of the different ones. So notice we have 2 subject-verb agreements here. We say the author presents. That's one. That's one subject-verb agreement. Then after that, we have the facts that force, which is another subject-verb agreement. So the big thing here to start off with, the author has no S, presents has an S, which is perfect. Then we have here facts has an S and force has no S. which is great as well. Now, if we look at all the other ones, we have no S, no S. Okay, that's no good. Then we have the author, we have no S here. Okay, so that's no good. Now in also this one, we have a no S combination, so that's good. However, here we have facts with an S and then forces with an S. So that's no good. So notice we have to have it basically consistent throughout the whole entire thing, which is why B would be our correct answer. Great job. All right. Let's take a look at just a couple more. All right, I'll relaunch the poll. Let me know what you guys are thinking for this one. And also don't worry about even, just putting your best possible answer, even if you're not sure. I can't see who's putting in all the answers. Everything just comes up anonymous. It just tells me how many people chose. So don't feel bad, just kind of putting your best guess, giving your best shot. Absolutely no big deal. So, because keep in mind, a little tip for the exam is you don't get points off if you guess. So let's say you guess and you get it correct. Well, that's great. You get points because they think that you understood the question and you got it correct. You don't need to show your work. You don't need to do anything like that. So definitely good to just get in the habit of guessing, even if you don't know, because that's what you want to do on the test. And we'll see that a little bit later and maybe like a week or two once we delve into some practice testing. This one seems like a little harder for some of you. So again, just pick your best shot. I'll give you guys a few more minutes. So. All right, so a lot of you guys chose B, which looks like it's correct. So that's awesome. If not, let's go over why B would be the correct answer though. All right, so let's take a look. B is correct. Now why? So first and foremost, always remember, cross out additional information and prepositional phrases. So this word by is going to stand out to me because by is a preposition. So you say by several well-known scientists. That's my preposition. Remember, it always starts with the preposition and it always comes with the noun or the item to follow. So all of that I disregard. Now, if you're having a hard time recognizing these prepositions, I suggest to go back to lesson 1. There is a video lesson in lesson 1 that basically describes everything that you need to know about prepositional phrases. Also, if you're confused of what counts as a preposition, literally it's just memorization. You'll just have to go on Google, type in prepositions, and there's a long list of like 80 different prepositions. Now, I wouldn't suggest to try and memorize every single one of them, but just be aware of them and be able to recognize. They typically show like where or when something occurs. So notice here, it's giving more information about the ongoing research. It's saying that the research is by this person or with this person or things like that. Those would always be prepositions. So now we got ongoing research, and that simply is my subject. So now that we have that that's my subject, now we could go ahead and say ongoing research suggests. Well, notice the problem there, I have no S and no S combination, so that's no good. So right away, I know that I need to have the S here. Now we say that is or are. So how do you recognize the is or are? Well, this is no longer based off the ongoing research. Now it's actually based off of the many reasons. So anytime that you have the word there or here, it's based off of the item that is after the verb. So remember we talked about where the verb and subject are in the sentence. Sometimes it's at the beginning of the sentence, sometimes it's at the end. It kind of could mix around in different ways. So that's what's going on here. Many reasons now is my subject. And are is my verb. So since that's going to be my verb, now I need to see lessons has an S. So then reasons has an S. Therefore, it is going to be plural. So now I have to say, okay, well, how can I go with something plural? Well, are is plural, is singular, so that one's going to be out, and I would have to go with B as my correct answer. So this is a challenging one because it's kind of a multi-step thing because there's two subject-verb agreements. However, keep in mind that that is something that they could test you on. Would be one of the harder questions, but it is something that they could test you on. Right. So let's go ahead and do this one. Now, as you do this one, I'm going to give you a huge, huge hint. Cross out the prepositions. I know I've been saying that for all of them so far, but it's really, really going to help a ton with this practice problem. So let's give it a shot. We'll do this one and maybe like one or two more after this. So I just posted the poll. Let me know what you guys are thinking. None of you guys got a poll? That's weird. Sometimes it doesn't work. I'll relaunch it. Let me know if you guys, did you guys get it now? Can you see it? Okay, perfect. Now it looks like people are logging in. Yeah, if you ever don't see a poll, just let me know. Sometimes it doesn't show up right away. Awesome. Answers are looking pretty good so far. Just keep in mind the S, no S combination. Now help fix the couple that's wrong. All right, I'll give you guys like 30 more seconds and then we'll review. All right, so I'll end the poll. All right, so it looks like about half of you guys chose A, half chose C. So for the ones that chose A, really, really focus in because our correct answer is C here. Now, why? Remember the two main things. Always remove prepositional phrases and then also the S, no S combination. So what are some prepositional phrases? Feel free to just type in the chat. Do you guys see any prepositional phrases that I could cross out? In, perfect. So in, of, in the pond, yep. So it's not just remember the preposition, but it's the word that follows, yep. So in the pond. Of frogs, perfect, of frogs. On top, yep. So on top is another one. Of is linked to the mountain. All right, perfect. So it looks like we got them all. So now what you want to do is cross all that info out. None of that can be my subject to the sentence. All gone. Now all I'm left over is exists many rare species. So based off of that, what do you guys think is the subject? Let me know in the chat. Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So I'm seeing species a lot. A couple that I saw different were like many rare species with, yeah, many rare species could also be your subject. However, one that I saw is frogs. Keep in mind that of frogs or frogs cannot be your subject because it's crossed out here. You only could have a subject that's not part of a preposition or additional information. So if you thought that it was frogs, that can't be it. And it's because it's crossed out because it's a preposition. So now moving forward with that, we know it's not frogs. Also, the word exists. Remember, that is my verb. We have two different things. Um, our subject is what the sentence is about, and that's going to be a noun. And then you have your verb, and that's going to be the action. So the action is existing. So this here is my verb, and then the many rare species, whatever you want to call it, even just species, that is going to be, oh, not my P, that is going to be my subject. So now basing off of that subject-verb agreement, my many rare species, is that singular or plural? What do you guys think? Perfect, yeah. So my many rare species is plural. So now I need to make this also plural. So remember the S, no S combination. Species has an S at the end. Exist here also has an S. I can't have both having an S. This exists is not plural. Remember, when you're dealing with a verb, no S means plural, which is why this one is going to be our correct answer, because we have an S, no S combination. This is going to be plural, and also the many rare species is also going to be plural. So if you were unsure about that, or if you chose A, double check that no S combination. All right, let's see if there's any other good ones that I suggest us to do. Actually, this one's great because it ties back to what we did, not even last week, but I think it was even the previous week to that. So let's go ahead and do this one, because keep in mind our punctuation rules with the colon. We'll review that in a second after. Let me know what you guys are thinking. I'm seeing a bunch of wrong answers here, and it's the wrong answer with the wrong type of punctuation. So think what punctuation we're typically using in different situations. What is the rule for the colon? So remember, before you put in your answer for this one, we want to go back to the colon rules. So let's just recap on that real quick before anyone else puts in an answer. But anyone remember what the colon rule is? Feel free to put it in the chat real quick. Perfect, perfect. We got a complete sentence and then explanation. So you must have a complete sentence and then the colon and then the explanation. So double check when you're trying to pick if it's a colon. Do I need a complete sentence before it? Do I have that complete sentence? Do I have the colon? If yes, awesome, let's choose a colon. If no, then we're gonna choose no colon. So let's double check on the rules for that. I'll give you guys a couple more minutes now that we recall that rule. Now, one thing that I saw someone post is keep in mind, when I asked for the definition of a colon, someone said a list. However, keep in mind, a list has nothing to do with a colon. Now, a list could be the explanation, but as long as it's any type of explanation, an explanation could be one word, two words, a list. So notice a list has nothing to do with a colon. So just make sure if that's kind of a thought process that you're thinking and you're thinking, oh, every time that we have a list, I'm going to put the colon, double check and say, nope, that's not true. The only, and I repeat, the only true fact about a colon is what we have here on the board, that it's a complete sentence before it and needs to have an explanation after. That's the only thing. Now I got another question here. If I was to put an option without the colon, would a comma need to be used since it starts a list? Okay, however, keep in mind, if it's starting a list, then remember there's no comma before the list. Because remember, we had multiple different comma rules. One was a list, right? However, the commas with the list are going to be commas within a list, not before a list. So if I said, like, my favorite colors are pink, comma, blue, comma, and green, notice here, that's my list, and I put commas just in between these three parts. I never need to put a comma before the list, because now it's almost making more things part of that list. So don't, so if you kind of get this misconstrued with the comma rules, make sure that you just recognize the comma rules with the list only have commas within those three items, doesn't have a comma before it. So with all that being said, let's just go ahead and end this poll. Let's take a look at some of the answers, because this was a really, really important one that I want to make sure you guys all get. So notice here, the first and foremost thing is I want to know if it should be include or includes. And thankfully, everyone got that right, which is awesome. Everyone crossed off A and B. So let's take a look at why we would cross off A and B. Well, simply because of the fact that we say the benefits of reading includes. Well, of reading, of is a preposition, of reading, that's our whole prepositional phrase, so that gets crossed off. Now we're just saying the benefits has an S, so then include would have no S. So awesome, so we do not need the includes here. So we're gonna cross both of those out. Those can't be our correct answer. Now after that, all I'm doing is punctuation question now. It has nothing to do with any more subject-verb agreement. So remember the complete sentence explanation rule. So if I ask, is this a complete sentence? I said the benefits of reading include. What do you guys think? Is that complete or incomplete? Let me know in the chat when you guys are thinking. So we got the benefits of reading include. Awesome. So a whole bunch of people here are typing in incomplete. So if we see incomplete, well, what's our rule? It has to be a complete sentence. So right away, if you recognize that that's incomplete, you should be able to get this one correct. So, and if you tripped up now, no big deal. Let's make the mistakes now so then you can get better on the exam and get it right on the exam. But make sure that systematic thought process. Don't just read and be like, oh, list, okay, it's a colon. Think to yourself, what's actually the rule? The rule is a complete sentence. So since we mentioned that from here to here is an incomplete sentence, right away I know that I cannot use a colon because the rule is using a complete sentence. So now it boils down to just this is my correct answer, but let's double check why nothing else would work. So I had some people say, oh, well, what about a semicolon? Well, remember a semicolon, we also need a complete sentence. Then you need a semicolon and another complete sentence. So a semicolon wouldn't work because, as we mentioned, the first half isn't a complete sentence, so semicolon's out. Same with commas. We mentioned a comma would be out too, simply because it doesn't follow any one of the 6 comma rules. Here we have a list of things, and a list is great for putting commas, but only between those items in the list. You would never need to put a comma before it as well. And notice here we do have a list. The list is stress reduction, comma, memory improvement, comma, and vocabulary expansion. So I have that list of 3 things. So you might be inclined to put the comma because you say, oh, comma rule with a list, or you might be inclined to put a colon because a lot of times when we have a colon, or when we have a colon, we're going to have a list, but it's not always going to be true. Now, if we wanted to correct this sentence to make it acceptable to put a colon, I could do something like this. I could say, the benefits of reading include the following, or include the following benefits, or something like that. Now I could put a colon because now I have a complete sentence. Now, the benefits is my subject, of reading is my preposition, and includes the following is going to be my predicate. So I have my subject, I have my predicate as well, and those two things are a complete sentence. Now, the reason that this is now a complete sentence is once I add the following, it completes the sentence. It gives us a complete predicate there. It tells us what are the benefits doing, what they're coming to follow. Before, we didn't have anything that recognized that it was a complete sentence or not. So just keep in mind, if you read that beginning portion and it's not a complete sentence, we definitely cannot have the colon there. Right. Anyone have any questions about the colons or any recaps that you guys want on some of the punctuation? Because that's a huge, huge concept that I really want to make sure that everyone gets. It comes up a lot on the test. So feel free to let me know if you guys have any questions on that. But how are you feeling with these? Anyone have any questions before we move on to the next topic? Right. Perfect. Looks like no one has any questions on that so far. Okay, so let's see. Let's go ahead and jump into some more content. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to actually skip around a little bit because I really want to make sure that we tackle the most important concepts. There are some concepts, for example, verb tense. It comes up maybe one question at an exam, if that. Sometimes there's even a test without verb tense on it. So I don't want to go over that right now. Lesson 5, the only thing that's super, super important there is transition words, which we'll tackle a little bit later, and related words, things like that are a little bit more independent that you could tackle on your own. So I want to skip to lesson 6. So if you are following along with your online learning platform, just recognize we only did half of 4. We're skipping 5 for now. We're going to do lesson 6 and 7 because those are the most important. Has a lot of really important info. All right, so following along, we're starting with lesson 6, wordiness, redundancy, and modifiers. So here we're going to go ahead and take a look at the wordiness, and I know we typically take a break. I want to do a little bit more, and then we'll take a break, and maybe after wordiness or so. So if you got to use the bathroom or anything, you could use our break then. All right, so wordiness sounds like a kind of weird concept on the test because it's something that you typically might not think that they would test on. They test on, tangible rules. However, this wordiness section is basically use the smallest amount of words possible without cutting out any information. So let's say I stood up here and gave you guys a lecture and I said something that I could say in 1 word in like 50 words and I just rambled on. You would be like, okay, can you just make it shorter? That's what this wants. So essentially this slide just saying the exact same thing that I said before, making it short, making it concise. Now, one other thing that this section tests is active voice, not passive voice. So there's 2 different types of quote unquote voice as you write. It's kind of like the tone of the piece. But you have active voice, and that means that the subject to your sentence is actively doing the action. So notice here, we have, my mom baked a cake. So what's our subject there? Anyone have any idea? Feel free to type in. Any thoughts? We got my mom baked a cake. What's our subject? Perfect, perfect. Yeah. So I'm getting a couple of responses now. So my mom, perfect. So my mom is going to be my subject. Now notice that person, my mom, is actively doing the action of baking the cake. That's what makes it this active voice. Now passive voice, a little different there. What's our subject there? We got the cake was baked by my mom. What's my subject? Is it still my mom or is it something else in the sentence? What are you guys thinking? Awesome. So we have the cake now. The cake is now my subject of the sentence. So notice the cake is not doing the action. The action is being done by my mom. So this active voice here is better than the passive voice. Simply why? Because this, it says in about 5 words. This is what, like 7 or 8 words? So 5 is more concise, which is better. So it's something that they actually test on this exam. So kind of when in doubt, go with the shortest answer. Doesn't always work because maybe you miss one of the other topics that we discussed. But if you really just throw up your arms and you say, I have absolutely no clue on this question, just go with the shortest one. It's kind of a little hint for guessing purposes. We want you to try to obviously not guess on the test, but if you absolutely have to guess, go with that shorter answer. So let's go ahead, let's do a couple practice problems to put this into application. So let's take a look at this one. I'll launch the poll, and let me know what you guys are thinking for this. So far, the answers are looking great here. Just keep in mind what topic we're on. It's a huge hint. Hint here, when in doubt, wordiness, shortest possible answer. Keep that in mind. All right, looks like that's helping out. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll. Let's review. So remember, we just mentioned when in doubt, the shortest possible answer. So there we go. That's our answer. The shortest possible answer, A. Now here, when we see this word effectively, that means nice and concise. That means that it's going based off of wordiness. So here, remember we mentioned when we have the commas, commas can show additional information. So this comma shows additional information about the sea of red. So we don't need to repeat in addition if that comma already does the additional information for us. So B is out. Now, in other words, I know we haven't talked about these transition words yet, but in other words, it literally means to restate the same exact thing again. So remember, if we're restating the same thing again, then that wouldn't necessarily be essential. But still, even in this case, we say the street is a sea of red, and then we say red is the traditional Chinese color. It's not saying the same thing, so that one's out. And now our very last one, we have that the street is a sea of red. Then we say the color. Then we say that is the traditional Chinese color. So notice there I'm repeating the color and the color. I don't need to repeat items there. Also, if I say red, we know what red means. We know that it's a color. Therefore, we could cross that one off and we don't need all that extra information. So a key thing here is effectively. Anytime you see that, write down in your notes as well. Anytime that you see effectively, that means that it's nice and concise, nice and short. All right, perfect. So let's do a couple more. All right, let's do this one here. Relaunch the poll. Give it your best shot. Oh, someone said, would A be a comma splice? So I just want to address that real quick before going into the next. So here, let me end the poll. I want to address this real quick. So here we said, the street is a sea of red, the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. So notice it's not a comma splice because the second part is not a complete sentence. A comma splice is when you have a complete sentence, and this is actually a really good question, a complete sentence, comma, another complete sentence. However, here, what makes up a complete sentence? That you need the subject and predicate. So here, the street, that is going to be my subject. Now, what is the street doing? Well, it's being a sea of red. So that is now my predicate. So right there, I have my subject and predicate. Great. Now, once I add the comma, I'm taking out red is. Now, if I kept red is and I said red is the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness, now you're correct. It's going to be a comma splice. But notice here, this just puts in red. Then it doesn't say red is after it. So here, now after this, I'm just saying the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness. Well, what about the traditional Chinese color of luck and happiness? It has no verb there, no action that the traditional Chinese color is doing. So therefore, I just have a subject, or maybe not even a subject, it's really just additional information there. So I have a subject, predicate, and then all after this is additional information, which counts as not a comma splice. Now, if I had the other structure where I kept it like this, and I just put a comma here and I kept red is, now that would be a comma splice because now red is my subject, and now I have a new verb on this second side of the sentence. Let me know if that answers your question. And for anyone else, definitely keep in mind that comma splice is really good. All right, so hopefully that answers that question. Okay, awesome. Glad that answers. All right, so let's go ahead and now jump into this one that we were going to do before. I'll relaunch the poll. All right, perfect. Poll should be launched. Let me know what you guys are thinking for the correct answer for this one. Awesome. So far, everyone's got it right. Great answers for these. All right, let's end this one. All right, so most of you guys got it, which is awesome. A couple just chose the other answers, so just double check on this. You always want to identify what topic you're discussing, or what topic is being tested, and that's really how to break the exam. So here, if you recognize and say, okay, well, it's not testing punctuation, it's not testing pronouns, it's not testing apostrophes, it's not testing subject-verb agreement, okay? So what could it be testing? Oh, wordiness. Perfect. So wordiness is going to be the most concise answer choice. Now notice A says it in about 5 words. B also says it in like 4 or 5 words, and we got 2 words, and then we got it more as well here. So notice here, that is going to be our shortest possible one as C, which is why C would be our correct answer. So when you get to each of these questions, obviously now you know that it's under the wordiness category, so it might become a little bit easier to recognize that C would be your correct answer. But on the test, it doesn't tell you like, hey, this is a wordiness question, or hey, this is a subject-verb agreement question. So it gets a little bit harder as we go, but you'll see when we do some practice problems, first recognizing the strategy to use and then using that strategy definitely could make it go a little bit smoother. All right, So let's go ahead, and we have a couple more topics that I want to go over today. Our next one is redundancy. However, let's just take a quick 5-minute break, just so you guys can use the bathroom, get a drink of water, whatever you need, and then we'll go ahead and reconvene at around like 4:15 or so, right? So all right, so feel free to take a break, and I will see you guys in a couple minutes. All right, so let's go and jump back into things in a minute. If you do have any questions on what we've done so far, feel free to type it in the chat, or if not, then we'll go ahead and get started in 1 minute. All right, so let's jump back into things. So we just did wordiness. Now there's kind of a subsection of the wordiness called redundancy, and that's what we're going to tackle next. All right. So redundancy, pretty much the way that you could think of things is just make sure to look out for things that are synonymous. Things that are synonymous, if you're unaware, is basically just things that mean the same. So for example, like pretty and beautiful. If I said, she is pretty and beautiful, I could really get the point across with just saying she is pretty or she is beautiful. I don't need to say both to get my point across, just one is perfectly fine. So let's take a look at this first one here on the screen. Let's just give it a try. Let me know what you guys are thinking for this. I launched the poll. Let me know if you think which one's the answer. And if you're unsure, omit the underlined portion just simply means delete the underlined portion. So anytime you see that, it's just deleting it. So let's give this one a shot. Some people are saying the poll's not showing up. Let me launch it again. Again, apologize about that. I don't know why sometimes it doesn't show up. All right, I just launched it again. Let me know if you guys see it. No, you guys still can't see it. How about now? All right, it looks like I'm getting answers now, so hopefully it worked. Perfect, perfect. All right, awesome. Everyone's saying yes now. All right, answers are looking all right so far. Just keep in mind the redundancy factor, making sure that you don't repeat any concepts. All right, so let's take a look at this one. We got each year, once a year, every year. So notice all of those things sound very similar to one another. So if you get to the test and you're like, oh, geez, I have no clue. Like all these basically say the same exact thing. Tells you you're probably dealing with wordiness or redundancy. Remember, we mentioned before how we want to try to recognize and make sure that you're tackling the question in the correct way. And here, you want to make sure that you tackle it with the redundancy strategy. So if we take a look at this, there's really no difference between each year, every year, once a year, all of those different types of things. But it's also the same as annual. Annual means that it's happening every single year. So if I say that annual race, that's already telling me that it's happening every year. And it's telling me that it's happening each year and once a year. So considering that, A, B, and C are all incorrect. Therefore, D would be my correct answer, and I could just say the annual race for the charity was held. And now I don't need to say that it's going to be held every year. I'm just saying that it's just held in general, and it's held every year, which we mentioned already here. So notice there, if you're looking at answers that all look very similar, double check that you didn't repeat any concepts. So let's keep in mind this same general concept. These are a little bit more challenging, or maybe not for you. But let's give this a shot. What are you guys thinking for this one? And again, I did post a poll, so if you don't see it, let me know. Awesome. So far, everyone that's voted in has got it correct. So that's awesome to see. But I give it a couple more minutes so everyone else can vote in. So far, so good. All right, so everyone that voted in for this one got it correct. So as you could just see the pattern here, when we're dealing with redundancy, deleting the underlined portion is a typical one. If you see that, don't automatically go to it and say, oh, I've seen that it's always the correct answer. Sometimes it isn't, but it is something to just be aware of, that it could be your correct answer and you could be dealing with redundancy. But notice here, we're specially designed, basically is talking about the same thing as all of these other answers, which is why we can delete it. Awesome. All right. All right, let's just try one more and then we'll move on to our modifiers. All right, so I launched the poll. Let me know what you guys are thinking for this one. So far looking pretty good, just a couple wrong answers, but just keep in mind, see if there's anything that you're repeating here. All right, so to end that one, we have that there is a years-long process happening. Now, years-long process means that it's taking several years to complete. Several years and several years. So we don't need to repeat it. Therefore, all of these can be out, and then D is our correct answer. So again, notice here that common theme, delete the underline or omit, things like that typically goes back to this redundancy. Don't automatically choose that, because God forbid you choose that on the test and it's actually testing something else. You want to just make sure that it's not based off of this redundancy, but definitely definitely look at the redundancy style questions when you see that. All right, perfect. So great job on that. So now we have another topic within this general section that is something called modifiers. Now, modifiers is basically a word or phrase that is used to describe something in a sentence. So It's similar to like those prepositions that we talked about, where if it tells you like it's by the park or where it's located or what's it doing. But it's going to look something like this. Now, we have two different types of modifiers. One is called misplace, one is called a dangling modifier. Now, we're going to stress the dangling modifiers in this class just because of the fact that dangling modifiers are predominantly on the SAT, and this is a predominant SAT class. However, I'm just going to touch on the misplace because if you decide to venture in the ACT territory, misplace is more prominent than the dangling modifiers. Both are fair game for both tests though. So if, let's say, you're taking the SAT, don't just disregard the misplace modifiers because it's definitely something that could come up. It's completely fair game. So as we mentioned before, a modifier is basically just a descriptive word or phrase. It's going to describe something in the sentence. Now, the big rule is that the modifier must be next to whatever it's modifying. So for example, let's take a look at this misplaced word. So we said the child ate the cold dinner without complaining to her mother. So notice cold, that's my modifier. It's directly next to the dinner. That means that the dinner is cold. Notice now in the next sentence, I have the same exact words, yet I rearrange it slightly. I say the cold child ate the dinner without complaining to her mother. Now, cold is still my modifier, but now it's directly next to the child, meaning that the child is physically cold. Maybe their heater broke, maybe she doesn't have a blanket, maybe she doesn't have a sweater, something like that. So there's always for these going to be some type of context clue around the sentence. For example, as I mentioned, maybe she doesn't have a blanket or a sweater, maybe the heater broke. Things like that would show that it's a cold child. If maybe the microwave broke or the oven broke or something like that, then that would insinuate maybe that the dinner is cold. So you're always going to need to look for context clues. Now, in the second one, this is a completely misplaced phrase, and you don't know which one's correct unless you have context clues around it. So if we have the car, which was very fast, appealed to all the race car drivers, which was very fast, that's my modifier. Now, since that's my modifier, it's describing the car since it's directly next to the car. However, here, if I say the car appealed to all the race car drivers who were very fast, now it's describing the driver. So actually the physical driver is a fast driver, not that the car, it could be any car that they drive, they're just going to drive it very fast. But the first one is saying that specifically that one type of car is a very fast car. It has a high, limit of the speed that it can travel. So notice these, I don't know which one's correct. There's going to have to be some context clues around it, which help insinuate what is going to be the correct answer or the incorrect answer, right? So that's our modifiers in terms of misplace. Now we have a second one, which, as I mentioned before, this one is going to be the most important one that we're going to look at. So let's take a look at this. Again, modifiers, same thing here, whether it's a dangling or misplace, it's going to be a descriptive word or phrase, and our rule is the same. The modifier must be next to whatever it's modifying. Now, in this case, let's take a look at number one here. There's one incorrect example to start. We have having arrived late for practice, the coach requested a written excuse. Anyone have any idea as to why, oops, someone say, can you zoom out a little? Yes, I believe I can. Give me 1 second. Okay, there you go. All right, so anyone have any idea, I hope that's better zooming out there. Anyone have any idea as to why this sentence here is incorrect? What are you guys thinking? Feel free to just type it in the chat. Let me know why you think that that would be an incorrect, based off of what we're talking about here, these like modifier things. Let's see. So it's incorrect, even though, awesome. So I'm getting more answers. We don't know who arrived late to practice. Someone said it's more of a cause and effect rather than modifying. It's not next to being what's affected. So yeah, so kind of a combination of all that stuff. So here, notice Having arrived late for practice, that's my modifier. But who? Technically, the thing right after is what it's modifying. But in this sentence, this is saying the coach arrived late for practice. Therefore, the coach required a written excuse. However, we know that that's not correct, hence why this is incorrect. Now let's take a look at the other two, another one that's incorrect. We say, having arrived late for practice, a written excuse was requested. Again, this sounds good. This is something that I might even say in just like everyday language, just speaking to a friend or something. But again, I don't know who arrived late for practice. Having arrived late for practice, that is still my modifier, but now it's describing the written excuse. So it's saying that written excuse arrived late for practice, and also the written excuse was the thing requested. Now, how we could fix this is something like this. Having arrived late for practice, the team member, now we know who arrived late for practice, and it's right next to it, need to provide a written excuse. Now, notice the problem here. If you're not aware that this is testing modifiers, this could get really, really ugly with thinking that it's wordiness or some type of redundancy or something like that. Because notice the correct answer is the longest answer. So you can't always just go, oh, it's the shortest answer, sweet, and just go with that one, because now you can realize that it's not always going to be the shortest one, because we have modifiers and these other types of sentence structures. So wordiness is going to be the last thing you test. Make a checklist for yourself. When you get to each question, say, okay, is this punctuation? Which is super easy to identify. Just, are there commas? Are there things like that? So is it that? Is it going to be subject-verb agreement? Is it going to be pronoun agreement? Is it going to be apostrophes? Is it going to be modifiers? There's going to be a few things more that we're going to test. For example, transition words, adding, deleting sentences, parallel structure, false comparison. A few of those things we're going to test as well, but there's really only like 10 things. So ask yourself and run through that list, what thing is it testing? Hopefully then you'll be able to recognize the thing that it's testing, which then could lead you to the correct answer. So let's take a look at one more thing within this dangling modifier right here. We say walking to the bus stop, the sky drenched him with rain. Again, we know who's walking to the bus stop and all of that here because we say him, but this right now is saying walking to the bus stop, saying the sky is walking to the bus stop. The next one, walking to the bus stop, the rain drenched him. That's saying the rain walked to the bus stop. The very last one, that's our only correct one, where we say walking to the bus stop, the man got drenched with rain. Now notice that's the best one because the man is the thing walking to the bus stop. Also, even though it might be longer than some of the other answers, it's still correct because it still fits within our modifiers and with that agreement. Right. So I know this is a little bit more complicated, but feel free to let me know if you guys have any questions on that. But meanwhile, let's go ahead and give a practice problem. So this is what it's going to look like on the test. It's going to be a little bit more lengthy, a little bit more tedious than what we just did, but let's give it a shot. Let me know what you guys are thinking. All right, so I just launched the poll. So far, answers are looking all right. Just keep in mind, specifically talking about the dangling modifiers here. Awesome. Answers are looking great so far. All right, I'll give you guys 30 more seconds and then we'll review. All right, so end of the poll. Let's take a look at what's going on here. So now we have a longer introduction. So we kind of have a longer dangling modifier, but still applies the same concept. So we say approaching a doorway in which dangles a red envelope filled with green paper money. So what is the main point there? Well, something is approaching the doorway. How do we know that it doesn't have to do with anything else? Simply because of those prepositions that we talked about earlier on today. So in is a preposition, with is a preposition. So all of those things where these are just kind of additional thoughts at the end of the sentence. The main bulk is approaching a doorway. So now I ask myself, all right, what is the thing approaching the doorway? Is it the lion's teeth? Well, no, the lion's teeth cannot approach the doorway. Is it the lion? Oh, well, yeah, possibly that could be it. Is it the envelope? No. Is it again the teeth of the lion? No. So therefore, B is going to be our correct answer, simply because of the fact that the lion can walk and approach a doorway, rather than the teeth or the envelope cannot actually physically walk and approach the doorway. So now again here, notice if you were on the test, how do I even recognize what this is testing? Well, initially I can see, all right, I might have an apostrophe, so maybe it's testing apostrophes. Other than that, there's no punctuation, so it can't be testing that. The subject-verb agreement can't necessarily be testing that. So kind of just, again, run through all those different things that it could be testing and then get your answer from that. All right, so let me know if you guys have any questions here on the modifiers before we move on to lesson 7. I want to do maybe just, do you guys want to do a couple more practice problems for these? How do you feel with the modifiers? Yeah, more practice problems. All right, so let's just do a couple more practice problems of these, because it is kind of a tricky topic, but I want to make sure that everyone feels comfortable with this before moving on. So let me go ahead. I'll bring up the Prep for Success platform. Let's go to modifiers. All right, let's do. Let's actually do one of these. All right, so let's try this one. Let me know what you guys are thinking for this. Don't worry about the poll. Just write in the chat like A or B, 1 or 2, whatever. So far, the answers I got are perfect in the private message. Awesome, awesome. Yeah, so here our correct answer is going to be B, and that's what I'm seeing in the messages. Because notice if we went with the other one, we say, despite having finished her dinner. Well, who finished the dinner? It's not the mother that finished, but the mother is encouraging the daughter to eat the dinner so then she can leave the table. So if we were to have this modifier in this way, we would have to say, despite having finished her dinner, the daughter was not allowed to leave the table by her mother, or something like that. We would need to rearrange the structure so then the daughter is directly next to despite having finished her dinner. All right, perfect. This one's a little difficult. Let's give this one a shot. And again, just feel free to type in the chat A or B, which one you think. Right. So let's take a look at this because I'm seeing some people say A, some people say B. So it's almost kind of split between evenly which ones you guys think. So let's take a look. So we said, let's just first start with A. Let's just go in order. So we said, she saw a garden full of roses on the way to class. So notice here, she is so far away from going to class, because who went to class? Is it the roses or the garden that went to class? No. On the way to class should be, she on the way to class saw this garden full of roses. So that's what's going on here. On the way to class is right next to she. Now what did she do? She also saw the garden full of roses. So she is accurately placed in the middle of that sentence to show that she did both of those items. Rather than if we went with A, and keep in mind, based off of that, B is our correct answer. If we went with A, that's saying that this garden full of roses is walking to class. So we literally have this, garden of flowers, and they get up and walk to class. They start going to class. That's essentially what this first one is saying. And we know that the roses, or the garden full of roses, is not going to be on their way to class, but it's she. Notice how far removed it is. And remember the rule. We need to make sure that the modifier is directly next to the thing that it's describing. On the way to class isn't describing the roses. On the way to class isn't describing the garden. It's describing she, because she actually physically walked to class. So keep that in mind here, even though it looks like both of these are correct, and it looks like A could be correct based off of just everyday language, we're going based off of the conventions of written English. And you're going to hear that a lot, even watching some of these videos, or even when they read the instructions on the SAT, they say, please make sure you answer correctly based off the written conventions of English. Written and spoken English sometimes are a little bit different from one another. So in spoken English, you could get away with the no change. However, written English, it's technically not correct, and you would have to go with B as your correct answer. So just keep that in mind. Let me know if anyone has any questions on that, because again, as I mentioned, that one's a little bit more difficult. All right, and let's just try a couple more. Let's try this one here. So it's a little bit more difficult. Now we got all answers, so I'll go ahead and post a poll for this one. Right, let me know what you're thinking here. And there should be a poll open for this one. No poll? All right. Let me relaunch the poll. Can you guys see the poll now? All right, perfect. Looks like people are voting in now. our answers are looking pretty good. Just keep in mind of the modifier, the descriptions. All right, awesome. So it looks like most of you chose A, which is great because A is the correct answer. So taking a look at this, we have spread by host organisms. That's my modifier. I'm introducing the hundreds of individuals here. Now, is the hundreds of individuals the thing that's being spread? Probably not, but maybe it's the virus or something, which is honestly very, very typical for now. But here now it's the virus that's being spread. So here we're saying the rabies virus. So in this case, that's why we're going to go with A, because that is the item that is being spread by those host organism. Perfect, perfect, great job. All right, so let's take a look. How much more time do we have? So just want to make sure. Okay, so we got like 15 minutes, so perfect. So let's take a look at just one more topic before we wrap up. Now, also just to give you guys an idea while I pull up the last topic, is there's going to be the rest of the structure of classes. You have one more class than in terms of the language arts verbal, one more class. In that, we're going to open up a little bit more of the actual practice tests, run through practice test problems, also do a little bit more of the reading. So if when you read, you like to take notes and you like to annotate things, we will be doing practice test 5 next time. So if you're that type of person that wants to have things tangible and printed, in order to get the practice test, just literally go on Google and type in practice test 5 or SAT practice test 5. And when you open that up, it's going to bring you to the SAT practice test number 5. So what I suggest is if you click on that, you will see the practice test. Now, you don't have to fully do this practice test, but we are going to work on this practice test. We're going to learn, and we've been focusing a lot on the language arts thing, so we're going to focus on a little bit more of the reading next time. So if you're the type of person that, likes to actually write things out and really likes to kind of fine tune things that way, then I suggest printing it. If not, and you don't care and you just could read things directly on the screen and still retain things, that's absolutely fine too. You could go ahead and just use the link that way. So actually, I'll post this link just so oh, if someone said, if we have the SAT book, is it the same thing? And yes, it is the same thing. So if you do have the book, try and dig that up for next time, because we will be doing some of the practice tests in that book, or I also sent the link. Now, if you do want to do practice tests on your own, you could either, if you have the book, great, you could practice that way, or just type in practice test and then put any number after it. However, I highly suggest do not do practice test 1. That's the one that we're going to use for our actual practice tests. So just to give you an idea of the scheduling, you're going to have, so you're going to have next week, and that we're going to finish the language arts, and we're also going to do the reading section. Then the following week you have break. So on break, you guys have no class. So there's going to be no class that break. Then the class after that, so the following class is going to be a practice test. So you're actually going to take a full-length practice test, kind of run through, do the motions as if you would actually be sitting there in the actual class. And then the following class is going to be a review. So that review, come to that class with any questions. Obviously, you can come to any class with any questions that you have, but that's going to be our very last class where we review absolutely everything, kind of doing a quick recap on all of the topics that we've discussed throughout the class. And then we're also going to do just a review on this practice test. So I highly suggest that you guys do come to that practice test class, because you will be going through the motions. You will be able to also get your score, which is super important. So you could kind of see where you're at with that. So believe it or not, the class is kind of wrapping up pretty quick. We already have 3 classes under our belt. So we have 3 teaching classes. Then next week, we're going to finish up some of the teaching. Then you guys have break. Then you have a practice test. And then you're going to have a review. So just to kind of recap, that's basically the general structure of how you're going to go about things for the remaining of the class. All right, so just to wrap up, I do want to just touch on, since we have about 10 more minutes left, just touch on a couple of last things. All right, so let's go ahead. And like I said, here we're skipping around a little bit. So I want to go to the sentence order section. So this section is one that is typically a little bit more difficult because it kind of has a lot of different components. Each question is very different. But if you find yourself struggling on this, there's 4 main things that I really want you guys to look for. The first one is any dates and years. The reason why that's super important is because things normally go in chronological order. I wouldn't say like in 2002 this happened and then backtrack and say in 1992 this happened. I'd probably say in 1992 and then say, oh, and then later this other thing happened in this following year. So dates, years, even timing words like now, currently, after, before, all those things are really good to look out for too. Transition words are also really good to look out for. We're going to delve into that a little bit more next time, but transition words are super important. Also, the subject and predicate of each sentence, that's super important because the sentences typically lead from one subject into another subject or one by predicate into another subject. So for example, if I said, my dog likes to play in the park, and then said the park is very beautiful. Notice how I ended one sentence with the park, and then I started up with the next sentence in the park. So that is something really to look out for, just to make sure that your one sentence leads into the other. And now, believe it or not, pronouns is something that's actually kind of coming back into play with this sentence order, sentence deletion, because what happens here is if you say, like, it is important. Well, what is it? It is going to need that antecedent or going to need that reference term elsewhere in the sentence. So placing that where we recognize that pronoun is going to be super helpful. So let's go ahead, let's take a practice problem. I'll walk you guys through this as well. Before I walk you guys through it, I just want you guys to give it a shot on your own too. So I'll post a poll, give this a shot, and then we will review. So someone said, if we move it, are we allowed to rearrange the wording? No, you have to literally just take that exact sentence and just move that exact sentence somewhere else. You can't change the wording of the sentence, because technically if you're allowed to change the wording of the sentence, then we could change it to whatever we want and then it can fit within any place. So keep in mind, it's literally just keeping that exact sentence and just placing it somewhere else within the passage, or possibly leaving it where it already is. All right, so let's take a look at this one together. So I'll walk you through exactly how I would do this on the test. So let's say I got this practice problem. How would I go about doing it? Well, first and foremost, I'm going to start looking through the passage. So I'm going to say, one significant benefit of 3D printing technology is the ability to create scale reproductions of fossils. Then I say, but now, so right as I read that sentence, which is sentence 2 that we're supposed to be looking for, I see but, which is a transition. So remember, transition words are one of those 4 things I should be looking out for. Now I see but now, well now, that's a timing word. So since I recognize that I have a timing word, that's something that's also super important. So now I have that, now I have that timing word. Let me get the annotation back. Okay, so I have the transition and then I have the timing word. So those are 2 things that I want to look out for. Now after that, I continue and I say the 3D scale models can be rearranged with ease, which is a huge boon to scientists. So now the subject and predicate one, you guys can always use in every single case. So now what is my subject and predicate? Well, I'm talking about the 3D models and I'm talking about them rearranging and specifically how easy it is. So now I'm going to read elsewhere. I want to find somewhere else that I'm talking about the models. I'm also talking about rearranging them. And let's keep reading. So sentence 3, I say a team led by Drexel University professor Kenneth Lacarrara is making models of dinosaur bones 1/10 the bone's original size in order to learn how they fit together when the animals were alive. All right, so sure, I'm talking about the models there, but I'm not really talking about rearranging it much. Not talking about how easy it is. So let me keep reading. Maybe I could put it there, but let's see if there's any better place. So continuing on, I see in the past, that's a keyword. That's something that I should be looking out for. In the past is also a timing word. So notice here I have a timing now and in the past. So what did I say? Well, I mentioned that it always has to go in chronological order. So this sentence, now I know, has to go somewhere after sentence 4. Therefore, A and B are out. Now, right off the bat there, then we typically say, okay, it's got to be after sentence 4. Great, 4 is my answer, and I circle that, and C is my answer. However, it could be anywhere after in the past, because the future is anywhere. It could be like 1 sentence after, it could be 40 sentences after. It doesn't matter, it's just later on. So I'm going to keep reading sentence 4 and say such research was limited by the weight and bulk of the fossils as well as their preciousness and fragility. Well, notice there I'm not talking about the fossils, not talking about the models. I'm talking about the fossils, as well as instead of the rearranging. So I'm going to read on to sentence 5. Then I see in many cases, scientists had to rearrange. Awesome. There we go. Now we're saying rearrange the bones virtually using artist renderings. Now, notice how this is rearranging in a challenging or hard way. This is talking about rearranging in an easy way. Now, also remember we had that timing word as well as that transition word, but. So, but is a contrast word, contrasting easy to hard. So that's why I want to place it after sentence 5, which would be my best possible answer for this one. If you chose 4, 4 is kind of the trap answer here that everyone chooses. However, keep in mind 5 is going to be the correct answer because of those things that I just mentioned. Right, good. So let me know if you have any questions on that. If not, no big deal. Feel free to log off. Someone said, why is A wrong again? Well, it's wrong because if I use but has to contrast. I'm not contrasting the sentence before. Sentence 1 and sentence 2 have nothing to do with one another. 1 is saying that I'm using 3D printing to reproduce these things. And then the next sentence is saying that the 3D scale models are rearranging. The first sentence has nothing to do with the rearranging. So notice with that subject and predicate, they're talking about two completely different subjects and predicates here. So that's why we can't go with A. We also cannot go with B before sentence one because of that same concept as well. So someone says, how can you see like sentence 5 as hard? So what I mean by hard is that it's a challenging way to rearrange bones. If I said scientists had to rearrange the bones virtually using artist renderings, that means if I have all these different bones, I have bone 1, bone 2, bone 3, so I have all these different bones, so I have all these different bones. Now I have a picture of my dinosaur, and yeah, that's my dinosaur. So I have a picture of my dinosaur, and I need to now say, okay, this bone, by this picture, it belongs in this place. Oh, by this picture, this bone belongs in this place. And I have to line it up. So that's showing how challenging or hard it is to rearrange the bones in this method. But this is saying that we have these scale models, which makes it easy. So that's all I meant by easy and hard with that contrast. So then yes, in this case, the correct answer is going to be D because of the fact that you need that contrast. How do we know that we need the contrast? Simply because we have this word but, and but typically shows that contrast. And we'll dig deeper into those transition words probably during next class. So if you have more questions about specifically those transitions, hopefully that will be answered next class. But hopefully that answers all the questions that I just got in the group chat. But if you guys have any other questions, I'll stick around for a couple minutes or two. Awesome. So it looks like that answers. Everyone's saying thanks for that. All right. So hopefully that answered. If not, feel free to message again. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week and have a great rest of your week. Bye, guys. You too. Have a great week, everyone. Someone said this is a little off topic, but do you think we'll be having the SAT in June? I sure hope so. I know I teach a lot of other classes as well. A lot of people are asking that when will the next SAT be? As of now, it is scheduled for it to be taken in June. If not, there is the August one as well. So even if you're preparing out for the May or June or whatever you're using this class to prepare for, just make sure that you stay up in the loop for whatever test then you're going to take. Hopefully, though, it will be up in June. I know some other tests are going online. Some other tests are doing different things like that. So hopefully they'll make it work, but they're definitely going to do something to make you guys take the test before you go into it. However, some people are saying, should I register for the June regardless? And yes, I suggest register. Even if they say that they don't allow you to take the test, that's okay because they'll just either refund or credit it for another time. So let's say you schedule for June, at least that reserves a seat if they do have the June test. And then if for some reason they don't have it, then you could just go ahead and push it to August or push it to one of the other exams. All right, awesome. Glad that answered your question. All right, well, bye guys. I'll see you guys next week and have a great rest of your week.